If you need immediate help, please call the National Substance Abuse and Mental Health Hotline at 1-800-662-HELP.
Bottle of wine, fruit of the vine. When you gonna let me get sober? Let me go home and start over.
Welcome to Clean and Sober Radio, brought to you in part by Jefferson University Hospitals and Thomas Jefferson University, providing excellent clinical and compassionate care in the Philadelphia region, a proven leader in healthcare and education since 1825. And now, here are your hosts, Gary Hendler and Mark Sigmund.
Hey, hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us, and welcome to the show. Clean and Sober Radio features real people with real stories about addiction to drugs and alcohol. And I just might add that we are Clean and Sober Media. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that empowers people and families who are dealing with drug and alcohol addiction to solve their problems and to help those who cannot. We do it through direct advocacy, broadcasting, and maintaining a database of recovery centers and related information. That's why we're here. Clean and Sober Radio. Mark, what's new in recovery news this week?
So I got a sad story today. A 4-year-old boy has died after a possible fentanyl exposure at a New York City shelter. Police responded to the family shelter on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. and found the child unresponsive and administered Narcan. The parents admitted that fentanyl had been present. The death of the 4-year-old recalled an incident in 2023 in which a 22-month-old died after ingesting fentanyl at a daycare center. So here it is. This stuff is just straight poison. I mean, it's just, and for anybody that's using this stuff out there, keep it locked up, right?
Who's using fentanyl at home?
I mean, there's a lot of people, I'm sure.
For what?
For trying to get high,
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes.
Okay. I'm picturing the medicine cabinet.
I got you. Like the medical grade is what you're picturing. Yeah. So very sad story.
That's a very sad story. Is that what you got there?
Yes.
Okay. That's a tough one. I got to tell you something. We have a great show coming up. All right.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Kristin Casey is a true survivor. She has been and was in a relationship, a 6-year relationship. Did I say sick? I meant 6-year, but probably sick-year relationship with Eagle legend Joe Walsh. They were absolutely madly in love, but like any other couple, their addictions destroyed their own lives. And Kristen now is sober. She's helping others. And when we come back, we're going to meet her. And I'll tell you something. I thought I had a crazy story. This story is going to be awesome to hear about. So don't go away, everybody. We'll be right back.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
What's happening? Brandon Novak here from Those Movies Jacks, or author of that addiction memoir, Dream Seller. Do me a favor and tune into Clean and Sober Radio with Gary Hendler.
888-728-9941. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
Hey, welcome back. You can hear and enjoy the show on WWDB in Philadelphia, WPEN 97.5 HD2 in Philadelphia, WGAC in Augusta, Georgia, WNBR 1010 in Tampa, Florida, and among others. But that's just a little taste. You can always enjoy this show. So sex, drugs, and rock and roll was the perfect description of Kristen's life. She and Joe Walsh, guitarist for the Eagles, were the picture of a classic dysfunctional relationship. And everybody listening or watching this show knows what a classic dysfunctional relationship is. Kristen, welcome to Clean and Sober Radio.
Hi, glad to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Never better. How are you?
Good. I know we had a couple conversations this week, and we were very excited to have you on. And when we put the promo out last night, we got a lot of responses. So, okay.
Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah. So, all right. We're gonna jump around, find out a lot of stuff, and it might seem a little dysfunctional how we do this show, but because we're all dysfunctional sitting in here. I can tell you that.
Little ADD.
I figured old habits die hard, I guess.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's funny. Real quick. Old habits die hard. Mark and I, my co-host, we were talking about when we go into somebody's bathroom, we still look in the medicine cabinet to see what's in there. Did you ever do that, Kristen?
No, I got to tell you, I didn't do it when I was using, and I don't do it now. But I know that a lot of people do. I'm not kidding. Just last night, somebody asked me that. Do you ever peek in? Because I was a realtor for a long time, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I never did that. I didn't do it as an addict. But I was never really into pills. The kind of drugs that I wanted to do, people didn't usually keep in their bathroom.
Yeah. That's right. Hey, did you ever do Quaaludes?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And that had to be one of my favorite drug experiences ever. I was so disappointed when I found out you couldn't really get them anymore. They weren't, Joe had a lot of connections. My ex was so famous that guys like him, guys with really good drugs will seek out like the rich and famous. And so the rich and famous tend to get much better drugs than anybody else. And so Joe got hold of some and he said, you can't really get these anymore. They're not really made. I think there must have been some lab, some guy made up his own lab and was making them, but they were fantastic, I'll be honest.
That was my drug of choice. That's what put me in rehab. And when they stopped making them in 1984, I went into rehab in 82. So I wasn't affected by that tremendous loss. But when I bring up Quaalude, everybody, are you smiling right now?
I am smiling.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, like if I could have done Quaaludes every day back then, I might not have drank.
That's right. That's right.
You guys are killing me. They're killing me.
Mark is too young
I know,
to understand this.
It's
Okay.
probably a good thing. And I kind of hear that Gary, when he was clean when they went extinct. And I'll bet you were like, oh, thank God, these guys, nobody gets to do them now.
I actually felt bad for the people that were still doing them.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I did. All right, so Kristen, we'll get into the Joe Walsh thing and everything. But are you from Texas?
Well, I was raised in San Diego. I lived there till I was 16,
Okay.
and then I moved to Texas, and then I briefly moved back to California to live with Joe in my 20s. So I've spent a little more than half my life in Austin, Texas, and I consider it home. Yeah, I'm a dug-in Austinite at this point.
An Austinite. Now, what was your? I read, of course, I didn't know this. You had some issues with your mom, didn't you?
Yeah, my mom and I had a difficult relationship. Yeah, and let me just real quick say that she's a wonderful woman,
Good.
and I love her very much, and we have a great relationship now. But she had 5 kids. She dealt with a severe depression, and she had a very high stress job, and she was juggling chainsaws. And I came along at the third in a row, and I was not the sweet child that my older siblings were. I was the loud one that cried a lot and all that. So yeah, that kind of set us on a certain path, and that path kind of set me up for my alcoholism. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you had a feeling that you didn't belong a lot, and did you also have? Because I had this, I didn't belong, and did you think you looked a little weird? I'm not saying you look weird because you're beautiful, but I had those kind of issues. I think a lot of us do. The self-image usually wasn't accurate.
Oh, yeah. I had a terrible self-image. And, I did look different. Like, everyone in my family was good-looking and blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and considered conventionally attractive. And I had huge, big, dark freckles and red hair, and I was real skinny, and I developed a little late. And none of that, I still had really lovely boys wanting to go steady with me and all that. But in my eyes, I didn't know why. I thought it was just a real and attractive, and I had very low sort of self-esteem and self-image
Sure.
issues for sure from a young age, from like first grade, I think, like it was second or third grade for sure.
Yeah, I think that story. A lot of us had it. We had to
Yeah.
get out of that pain, and at a certain age, we had the access to get out of that pain. You know?
Yeah, and that's what the drugs. And that was the first time I took a drink. I was 14. I was babysitting, and this very handsome doctor came home, and he'd had a fight with his wife, so she went in the bedroom, slammed the door, and he took me in the kitchen and poured me a shot of tequila. Now, obviously, that's very inappropriate behavior, but all I knew was that he was a very handsome doctor, and I have a little crush on him. So I just did what he did. I did the salt and the lime and the tequila, and as it was within a couple of seconds, you know that feeling as it's going down your gullet. All of a sudden it's hitting your brain. And for the first time in my life that I could remember, I felt confident and funny and pretty and witty and charming and attractive. And I just felt like, and I carried on this little conversation like I was some kind of, I don't know, like I was a grown-up woman flirting with this doctor. And I'd never had that experience in my life. And I remember thinking, this is how other people feel normally. This is why other people act normal and smile and laugh and make friends easily. And you know, this is what normal feels like. That's what I thought.
That occurrence was like the seed that determined what your life was going to be for many years. You know,
It did because I started drinking every time I could get my hands on alcohol after that, and then about a year later, getting alcohol, or 2 years later, getting alcohol became very easy for me, and because I got a fake ID, and for some reason it actually worked, and that was my solution to everything. I was a problem drinker in high school. I mean, you might have even called me an alcoholic already in high school. I was one of the. I probably have a genetic predisposition. I don't know, but it took off very quickly for me.
I got to tell you something. We would have been great friends in high school. You know that?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I
I would have got you all the Quaaludes you wanted. Let me tell you.
Yeah. We
So
would have been best friends for sure.
was there a dad in the picture?
Yeah, my parents are still married, actually.
Wow.
My parents actually have a wonderful relationship. I mean, every couple has their problems, I imagine, but they love each other very much. But my father worked long hours as well, and he mostly left the discipline up to my mom. You know, when he came home from work, he just delighted in the kids. And it's funny because my second book kind of covers a little bit more about my relationship with my father, in that I always felt cherished and loved by him, and it provided a cushion from the tension, constant tension and criticism from my mother. But my father, the one I guess fatal flaw or challenge in our relationship was that when she would berate me and tear me down and be hypercritical and I know my mother didn't quite realize how harsh she was being at the time, but the truth is that's how it was affecting me. And my father would be right there. And my father's not the most aggressive person, or so my father never would save me. I always wished he would save me from my mother, but he'd leave the room or his eyes would glass over, and so that set me up too. Your parents, your relationship with your parents will set you up for how you develop attachments later in life. And very frequently, a woman's relationship with her mother will dictate whether she's able to form female friendships or not. And so I struggled for a long time developing female friendships because I put the framework of my mother's relationship on every female friend. I always thought, oh, she's going to turn on me someday. I can't trust her, that kind of thing, because my mother was my first female role model. And then with my father, I always thought, well, men are going to love me. They're going to treat me great, but they're never going to be there when I really need them.
Interesting.
And so that set me up for another pattern. Yeah, the patterns that we develop in life can very often be traced right back to our, family of origin.
Well, your father had to leave the room because he had to deal with your mother also. I've been in a relationship like that. You can't win.
It's true.
He wants to protect you
That's
for sure,
true.
but then he lives with his spouse. You
yes,
know?
And the truth is, I don't know how well he would have done had he tried to stand up. She might have, overruled him, and then all of a sudden there's even more tension in the house, right? Like everybody was doing, even my mother was doing the best she thought, the best she could. None of us were given all the skills that we really needed from our parents, and so we were all doing the best we could, my mom and dad and me included. but that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And overcoming all of that stuff is how I ended up the person I am today. And it gave me something to write about. So that's how I ended up with a couple of books.
Yeah, we're going to talk about both of your books, which, Rock Monster and Casey Dancer. We're going to get to those for sure. All right, so you're a kid growing up in San Francisco. Did you have friends?
So I had one good friend in high school who didn't go to high school with me, and she was a little bit more mature than I was. She smoked a little pot, and that was my first introduction to drugs of any kind. But I didn't really. There wasn't a lot of drugs or drinking in my high school years. I did have. I had a couple of friends in my San Diego high school that I had just started to make, because I was there for 2 years, and I just started to make some good friends there because I was very shy and timid. So I had acquaintances, and then I started to make some good friends, and then that's when we got uprooted and moved to Texas. So it was kind of at a delicate time. I was like finally coming out of my shell, and then all of a sudden we got uprooted and moved to Texas. And Amarillo was, compared to San Diego, such a small town, and I was kind of a punk rocker at that time, and I was like one of the first in all of Amarillo. So I was immediately branded an outsider, and some people thought I was like a devil worshiper. They didn't know what a punk rocker was. They just saw the mohawk and the boots, and they thought, well, she must be like a devil worshiper or something. And so the rest of my high school years, the 2 I had left in Amarillo, I was branded a bit, but I did make a couple of really good friends at that high school, the other punk rockers there. So I had friends, but it was a very, very small, tight circle. It wasn't like we were sort of accepted by the rest of the school or anything.
So you were a Catholic girl, high school, right?
Yeah, and actually, even at my church, the priest had a real problem with my hairstyle and would even say something from the pulpit about me, which sort of furthered me. That's going to make you feel like an outsider even more. It was really inappropriate, to be honest. But yeah, I was a Catholic, raised Catholic.
Well, I can just, you had the whole uniform and all that. All right, we won't get into that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, all right, so you, the first time you heard Joe Walsh on the radio, was like 1981. And you were in high school, correct?
Yes.
Did
yes,
you
I was
ever,
a freshman in high school.
I mean, I'm assuming you were into music and all that kind of stuff with, did you ever think that you would be living with this guy?
No, not at all. It's funny because I was 14. I was a freshman in high school, and I was just starting to listen to the radio because at home my mother would only listen to like her soft rock stations. Yeah. We weren't really allowed to listen to a lot of rock and roll. Yeah. So I had just started listening to the radio like in the carpool, and I didn't know the name of any of the bands, but I started to hear different songs that I liked. And the first time I ever heard "Life's Been Good," I was in the car, and I remember thinking, this guy's voice sounds so familiar, and but I didn't even bother learning what his name was. And then years later, of course, by then I'd become a stripper. I knew a lot of different bands because I was working in a club that played rock music, like rock and pop, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So I was pretty well versed in certain types of music. But when I met Joe, I had not heard the name Joe Walsh so much as I knew of the Eagles, right? Yeah. So when I met Joe, we were introduced by a friend who was a friend of mine was dating his bass player. She introduced us, and she just said, he's a musician. He sings in the band that my guy plays bass for. So I thought he was like some kind of older 1970s one-hit wonder. And I loved him to death. Like we met, and 20 minutes later, I was like in love with the guy. I really thought I've met the man I'm going to marry, but I still didn't know who he was. I didn't know how famous he was, or that I actually knew some of his songs until the next day when I went to his concert.
Wait, Kristen.
And then I thought, oh my God.
Kristen, he was 20 years older than you when you met him, okay? Did you tell your parents that?
Well, I had already moved out of the house. I was 20 years old myself. I'd been out of the house for 2.5 years or so. Yeah. My parents had kind of realized that I was just going to do my own thing no matter what they said at this point. And so we had kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy. But I liked older men. 40 was a little bit older than I usually dated. But Joe was a very youthful 40-year-old. I mean, like he was in some ways sillier and more playful than I was.
Right. So at this period of time, you glazed over. You said you were a stripper. How did you get into stripping?
So when I first left home at 17, I went to UT. I moved from Amarillo to Austin to go to UT, and I immediately got hooked up with the part of the punk rock scene that was involved with meth. I didn't, there was a part of the punk rock scene that was super healthy and fun and happy, and then there was the meth addicted crowd, and that's who I ended up gravitating towards, right? Yeah. So I had a 6-month spiral with meth. And it kind of, because of it, I ended up having to drop out of school. I'd spent all my grant monies and loan monies at school on drugs. I lost my job. I don't remember if I got laid off. I had a part-time job, and I forget if I got laid off or if I quit. I think I got laid off. And so I was broke. I had spent all my money on drugs. I quit doing speed, but I couldn't get a job like waitressing. I needed big money right away. Like my rent was overdue, and I had a roommate, and so I needed to come up with rent. So my neighbor told me about this little strip club down the street, and he goes, "It's I don't think you're that kind of girl, but it's a classy place, and maybe you can work there for a couple weeks and make your rent, and then go get a waitressing job." And I thought, well, I'll do that. So I went there just terrified as could be, because I'd never, I still had self-esteem issues. I didn't even realize I had a good body. I just sort of assumed I had an ugly body. And I walked in, and I thought it was going to be this really dreary, dark, miserable place where the guys were sleazy and the girls were unhappy. And I walked in, and everybody was having the best time. The girls were just having, everybody was smiling and laughing and dancing, and it was a party atmosphere. And I just thought, well, this looks fun. And so I worked up the nerve, got on stage. It was literally the most terrifying 10 minutes of my life. But I went back the next day and every day after that for the next 5 years. I loved it.
So did Joe Walsh, was he in the club and he met you there? Is that where he first saw you and you saw him?
No, actually, Joe wasn't really big on strip clubs. I mean, he went. He and Sean Penn would go in L.A. Together a lot. But Joe happened to be in Austin to play a gig, and his bass player was dating my friend Vicky because she had met them the last time they were in town at a gig. So she happened to be a stripper, but the guys didn't come into the club. They got into town the night before the gig, went to the hotel, and Vicky pulled me aside and she said, "Will you give me a ride to the hotel?" And then on the way there, she said, "Well, come upstairs. I want you to meet my boyfriend's friend. His name's Joe. He's a singer."
Right.
And they play together. They're doing this concert tomorrow. And so that's what made me think he was just, because she said his name was Joe Walsh, I think, and it didn't ring a bell. So I thought, he probably just had one hit from the 70s or whatever. Because the concert was like a bunch of different musicians.
Sure.
So I thought, well, none of them are big names because there's like 7 or 8 of them. So they're all probably like, guys who used to be good but aren't anymore.
Yeah, I got the picture. Hey, listen, if you're watching us now or just listening to us, we're talking with Kristin Casey. She's quite accomplished now, but I guess we have to say you were the girlfriend of Eagles frontman Joe Walsh. And also, if you're listening to us and you want to watch us do the show, because we have cameras in here, go to Facebook and go to Clean and Sober Radio, our Facebook page. Just like these folks, Judge Christopher Maddox from Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, Kevin Heyer, Madeline Crichton, Eagles Mary is watching. I wonder if it's the Eagles football or Eagles the band.
It's football.
Football?
It's football.
Okay. Madeline Crichton is saying hi from London, England.
Wow.
Allison Price Berwick is watching. Andrea Diaz
my beautiful wife
is watching. Rick Moyer is watching. Mike Brill, Chuck Williams. Mike Brill says, "Happy Friday, gentlemen. Sobriety is awesome because of the people I've met." We have so many people watching us, Kristen. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a break right now. Stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Okey-doke.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
Hey, this is Mark Sigmund from the classic rock band Vanilla Fudge. Keep on rocking, so good luck to everybody and all the best.
888-728-9941. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
Hey, we're back. Our guest today is Kristin Casey, and she was the a girlfriend of Eagles front guy Joe Walsh. They had I guess, a 6-year crazy relationship. You know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And we have to talk about that to Kristen. Okay, you there?
You bet.
You bet.
Oh yeah, that sums it up pretty well.
Does it?
Yeah.
All right. So you meet this guy. You didn't know. I mean, his name, Joe Walsh, could have been 100 different guys. And
Right.
you thought, all these were bands. They maybe they were one-hit wonders, or maybe they couldn't make anything happen, so they played in some, clubs, strip clubs, whatever. We get the picture. Mark and I get the picture here. So how did you finally know who this guy was?
So the night that we met, he liked me too. It was very obvious. There was a real spark between us.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing a voice in my head saying, "This is the man you're meant to marry." But obviously, I'm not telling him that. I'm just hoping he's going to start to fall for me. So he ends up asking me to stay. I stay all night. Like, we probably arrived there at like 2 a.m. or 2:15 in the morning, but we stayed till like 8 a.m. and talking and laughing and making out and that kind of thing. And then before I leave, he says, "Well, write down your full name and I'll leave a ticket at will call. So tomorrow, Vicky, his bass player friend, my friend,
Yeah.
you can go with her and then meet us backstage." So the next day, Vicky picks me up. We go to the concert. We go backstage. And we go to their trailer, and it turns out Joe's ex-girlfriend that he had just broken up with had showed up to surprise him because, I guess she wanted to get back together or something. So she's in the trailer, so I have to pretend like I don't even know the guy, that I'm just there with my friend Vicky, and it's so awkward that I'm just like, I'm going to go, "Okay, bye guys, nice to meet you," whatever, and I go just to watch the concert, and then I'm going to go home, and I'm so upset, but I go stand out and I wait for him to come on stage, and as soon as he does, he starts playing song after song that I actually know, that I know from the radio. And that's when it hit me like, oh my God, he's not a one-hit wonder. He's a huge rock star. I know all these songs, Rocky Mountain Way, Life's Been Good, you name it. And I was devastated because I thought, well, rock stars don't go for girls like me. I must have been a one-night stand. He's never going to call me. And so I went home and cried. And then as soon as the concert was over, he called me. And he said, "Sneak back over here. I'm going to get rid of my girlfriend. We'll get together." And so we spent the afternoon together. And then I gave him my number, and he called me a little bit later. And we, within a few months, we were a couple.
Did you have to pinch yourself? I mean, here you are in this big crowd, and he calls you afterwards. I mean, was that just such a shock for you?
Oh, God, yes. It was such a shock, and I was so happy. And then the funny thing was, it wasn't because he was famous, although that was kind of an exciting thing. But mostly, I thought the fame was going to interfere with our relationship, so it worried me. All I knew was that I had never fallen in love that quickly with anyone before. Like, it was really, like, it felt like fate. It felt like I truly had met the man that the God or the universe or whatever you want to call it meant for me to marry. And I thought, this might not work out because he's so famous and he travels all the time. And so the fact that he was famous actually was almost a little upsetting. But of course, the longer we were together, the more fun it became, because it was a really fun lifestyle. I have to say, like, just his celebrity friends, most of them were absolutely delightful, but we got to travel all the time and do the funnest things, and was constantly seeing great live music. And it was a fun lifestyle. And of course, there was loads of cocaine and drinking. And of course, there were also horrible fights and just terrible withdrawals and, all the highs about, or you think that would come with dating a rock star, and all the lows that come with addiction.
I mean, like, when you met this guy, you started going out with him. What did your friends think? Did your parents ever hear of this guy? And was it like, I can't believe I'm in a relationship with Joe Walsh?
I probably, like, my best friend at the time, she was a very, like, grounded, level-headed person.
Yeah.
And she was mostly concerned that Joe was good to me, and he really liked her. He thought she was really sweet, so I was happy that my best friend got along with my boyfriend. My other friend Vicky, he absolutely loved. So I had Vicky and my friend Kristen were like my two closest friends. I didn't go around telling a lot of people because, for one thing, I didn't want them to start asking me for concert tickets and autographs.
Right.
So I didn't. So I didn't go around telling a lot of people. Yeah, and then once I moved to LA, because a couple of years into our relationship, I was traveling with him all the time, but you know, I was never home, and I had a cat and a job, and I said, look, I either need to go back to college and make something of my life or move in with you. Like, it's up to you. And so he moved me in, and then I started traveling with him all the time. So his friends became my friends, and I kind of lost touch with, you know, I did have another good friend back then, a guy named Mark, but my friends were kind of from the punk rock scene a little bit, like 2 of my 3 friends. And so we didn't really look up to rock stars in the same way. We always had a sort of really grounded egalitarian attitude about musicians, you know, like they're just one of us. We don't put them on pedestals. And I think that's why Joe liked my friends, because they just treated him like a normal guy.
But at a certain point, didn't you really buy into this whole rock scene? I mean,
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell you, at some point what happened was, like I said, I had told Joe, I need to go back to college to make something of my life, or I can come live with you. For some reason, it didn't occur to me I could do both, you know, so I moved in with him, and I did try at some point to go back to college, but it only lasted like a few weeks, and I dropped out for a second or third time by then. So I only had 1 or 2 semesters under my belt, and I didn't even finish my second semester. Well, no, I did. I had 2 semesters under my belt, but we were traveling so much, and you know, when you're 20 years old, you haven't fully formed an identity yet. You're still deciding who you are, what your strengths are, what your passions are, who you want to be in the world. And I had, you know, Joe was already very established. His identity was not just established, but it was big, right? He was famous. Yeah. He had a big personality, had a big identity. So I kind of subconsciously and a little bit consciously realized I could just attach myself to his identity, and then I never have to form one of my own. I never have to pursue my dream of being a writer. I never have to slog through 4 years of college and miss out on all the fun. I don't have to quit drinking, quit cocaine, which I can't seem to do. All I have to do is stick with this rock star, and I'll be the rock star's girlfriend. And you know, all the girls envy me, and all the guys treat me really well because I'm married to their friend. And so I decided at some point, I'm not going to develop my own identity. My whole identity is going to be that I'm a rock star's girlfriend, that I'm the future Mrs. Joe Walsh. So what happens when you do that is that you put yourself in a lot of danger, because if you break up and that guy's gone, then you're nothing. You have no identity to cling to. You're stepping on the edge of an abyss. You're a vacuum.
But you know,
and that's what happened to me.
No, I'm just going to say that can happen to any woman with any marriage. You know what I mean?
100%. Absolutely. And it does. It really does.
Yeah.
I think if you get married too soon, sometimes, like, especially like think about back in the 60s, a lot of people got married at 18, 20, 21.
Yeah.
And you don't have time to develop yourself, right? You only went to college to meet a man, and then your whole identity is Mrs. So-and-so. So yeah, it's not like I'm the first. And
except you were married. You're with a rock star, so everybody knows.
Yeah.
You know, we get.
It made it a little more intense. Yeah.
Francis B. from Austin, Texas, writes to me and Mark. Kristen, I have followed your journey, and at first it seemed so glamorous, and then it was not. I give you such credit and praise for how you turned your life around. Nice email.
Oh, thank you, Francis. That is such a sweet thing to say. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me.
Yeah. The intake of drugs was not normal, and the sex was not normal, as I read.
Yes, and I was very interested in hearing what it was like after the shows backstage.
But Kristen, be careful how you answer any of these questions, okay?
Yes.
I will choose my words carefully.
Okay.
Yes. What was it like?
Okay, so this is not probably the case for all rock stars' girlfriend, but my particular rock star had certain tastes and proclivities, and I was a very adventurous girl. I was extremely open-minded. I wanted to kind of try everything. So when we first got together, and he wanted to get a little kinky, I thought, all right, I'll try this out. You know, this sort of dominance and submission thing. I've never done it, but it seems interesting. It wasn't really a turn on, but he really seemed to like it. So we kept doing it, and then after a while, I kind of got into it, and it kind of got to be a turn on. But the problem was that after about 6 months or a year, maybe somewhere in there, I was like, okay, I can get into the kinky stuff. I can get into being submissive. I get that you like being dominant, but does every single time we do it have to be with bondage and ropes and blindfolds and paddles. And I mean, can we just do it normally once in a while? And so for 6 years, we had, it was a little bit, we were coming at it from different angles, so to speak. And I mean, sometimes it was great. Sometimes I could catch him early in the morning before he'd had a drink or a line of Coke and get him to do it my way. And, God love him. I will say this. I dated a lot of addicts, a lot of cocaine addicts.
Yes.
It's not uncommon for cocaine addicts because the thing is you need more and more stimulation to get where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's a super common thing, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know what he's like now. We once he got sober, we almost never did it, and then we broke up. So.
Do you ever talk to him now?
Well, we stayed friends for a long time. We stayed friends for a very long time. We loved each other very much as friends. We knew that we weren't. He got sober before I did, so So we kind of lost touch in that 2-year period. And then when I got sober, he was one of my first calls because I knew he'd be so happy for me. So we reconnected at that time. And then whenever he was in Austin or anywhere in Texas, San Antonio or Dallas, he would call me and I'd go see him and spend time with him. And then the last time I saw him in 2006, we talked about dating again because he was getting a divorce. I was single and we had a spark. And so we were both sober and we thought, well, maybe we try this, we'd go a little bit slower and we try this like normal people. Then right after that, he went back on the road and I met somebody. And so that relationship lasted a year. And when we broke up, I called Joe and I said, okay, I'm single again. How about that date you talked about? And he said, well, I just met someone. And then he went and married her. So that was that. So we did stay friends, but he, a few years after he got married, I think I've heard through the grapevine that his wife did not really approve of us being friends. And so she told him to stop calling.
And also when he went and got treatment, you really spiraled out of control, didn't you?
I became very suicidal, and I decided I was going to drink myself to death, and I did a darn good job. I came very close to doing it for the next 2 years. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, I was in and out of the hospital. Things were bad, but I was, like I said, I was mentally ill. That was the most mentally ill time of my life. I mean, I think addiction is a mental illness anyway. It's certainly the depth, the intensity at which I experienced it, but the suicidal years, that's a mental illness as well. And I just wasn't seeing anything clearly. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was a complete and utter mess, and I was losing my grasp with reality. Something pulled me from the brink, and I'm going to say it was the spiritual experience, because on a day that I thought I might die, I had a revelation, and I reached out for help, and I ended up in a 12-step meeting, and for me, for my particular case, it worked really well. I know there are other ways. At the time, I wasn't aware of any other way, but it worked for me. So that's what happened.
That's what happens. If you're just joining us now, if they're watching us, listening to us, whatever, all over the world, we're talking to Kristin Casey, and she had been the girlfriend of rocker Joe Walsh. I actually hate to even, when we have famous people on, I hate to keep bringing that up, but I guess it's just your story, and it has to, you are your own person, Kristen, but you did have that connection to this famous dude, I mean,
yeah. Well, when I wrote the book, it was obvious that because it had a celebrity angle, that was going to help sales. Yeah. I would have written the book anyway if my boyfriend at the time had just been Joe Smith, a plumber, right? I would have written the book anyway because the book was about dependency on drugs and alcohol, but also dependency on your partner. It's about codependency. It's about depending on your partner to define you, to define your very identity. So the story is relatable to a lot of people. Now, would it have sold as well? That I don't know. But Joe's fame was in part, it affected our relationship in a lot of negative ways. And because of that, I felt justified in using his fame as part of my healing journey. Right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if I have his blessing or not, because I started writing the book a couple of years after we last spoke. And when I tried to reach out to him to tell him about it, because I really wanted him to know, I was blocked. All the channels to reach him, I was blocked. So I wasn't able to tell him. My guess is that he probably enjoyed some of the book and probably wished I hadn't been quite so revealing in other areas. But, he's a pretty easygoing guy. And he's never called to say one way or another. I hope he liked it. But I think the story has value. There are a lot of books out there by girlfriends of rock stars or girlfriends of famous people, and it's just like titillation. It's just a bunch of like backstage stories with no character arc. There's no lessons learned. There's no beginning, middle, and end. It's just a bunch of anecdotes.
Yeah.
I don't personally enjoy reading those. Other people do. My story is about me. And most of the book is about the years I was with Joe. Not the entire book, but probably, 80% of it.
And that's Rock Monster, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Tell us a little bit about Casey Dancer. And by the way, both
Casey
of these
Dancer,
books you can get on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes, you can pre-order Casey Dancer. It comes out next month.
Okay.
And the full title is Casey Dancer, a memoir about dating, stripping, and a little hot yoga.
Yeah.
So the book Casey Dancer picks up where Rock Monster leaves off, in that it starts with me as a sober person realizing more than anything that I feel disconnected and I want intimacy in my life, meaning both friendship and romantic intimacy, and I have absolutely no idea how to achieve that because, as you know, alcoholics and addicts, the only way we connect is through drinking and drugging. Like,
right.
It lowers our inhibitions and it makes us feel worthy and it makes us feel confident and funny, and so we can talk to people. But of true intimacy, of truly allowing other people to see us and to truly get to know someone else without all our narcissism in the way, that's impossible when you're using alcohol and drugs at the level that I was. So my emotional growth and my ability to connect with people kind of stopped at the age of 14, and I wasn't good at it at 14.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm 30 years old, I'm sober, and I want to start dating, but I don't know how to date. I don't know how to flirt. I don't know how to have sex without alcohol. I don't know how to go slow with a guy. I don't know how to let a guy know I like him. I'm terrified of being vulnerable. I desperately need intimacy, but I'm terrified of it. So I kind of like make every mistake in the book. I move too fast. I act too casual. I act too serious. I scare guys away. I misread signs and I miss out on great guys. So the beginning of the book is me in early sobriety trying to figure out how to date. And it's kind of a comedy of errors. It's a little bit like Sex in the City meets Bridget Jones's Diary. But towards the middle of it, and it's really my journey of learning how to be vulnerable. And by vulnerable, I mean putting yourself out there with an open heart, letting people get to know you, and knowing that they might reject you. If you like this guy and you go out with him and you really let him know that you like him, you might get rejected and that might hurt. And that's a vulnerable place to be, but that's what you have to accept as an adult and just say, that's okay, I can move on. It's not going to devastate me. Every time somebody doesn't like me the way I like him. That's how you be vulnerable in a healthy way. So that's the first lesson I had to learn.
Okay, so these two books really, I'm encouraging our audience right now to order Rock Monster, and then in a couple weeks when Casey Dancer is released, really you should read both of these books together because they give a complete picture of your life.
Absolutely. You can pre-order Casey Dancer now.
Okay.
And it's like I said, it's the story of learning to overcome fear of intimacy in recovery, because anyone in recovery knows that whether you recover at 20, 30, 40, 50 or 80, you don't really know how to connect with people. And so you're kind of expected to learn that stuff in high school, but if you're drinking and drugging, you don't. And so all of a sudden you realize at 40 or 50, maybe when you get sober, that you don't know how to be authentic. You don't know how to set boundaries. These are all like vital life skills to having healthy relationships. So it's my journey learning to be vulnerable, authentic, and how to set healthy boundaries. But it's told in a fun way because it's mostly stories about dating and relationships. And then I have some stories in there about stripping, because there's no better place to learn how to set boundaries than in a strip club.
Oh yeah, I found that out myself. No, anyway, no, I'm kidding. Listen, okay.
Oh, no, you write that book.
Yeah.
You
Elaine
should
B.
write a
from
book.
Sarasota, Florida writes to us, I just saw the promo for the show that Joe Walsh's former girlfriend was your guest today. I'd love to say hi to her. Easy enough. Give Elaine call, 1-888-728-9941. That's 1-888-728-9941. It's a great opportunity to speak to Kristen. And before we take a break, one of these emails, we got another email I just want to read. Bill C. from Detroit, Michigan, writes to me and Mark, you guys seem to have expert advice, and I agree with you most of the time. most of the time, Mark.
Most.
How long have you each been sober? You don't talk about it. I've been sober for 42 years. How many years?
22.
22. There we go. 60. What's that? 66 years. Phew. I remember, Kristen. Can you remember we couldn't even get a weekend clean? We all remember that. Listen,
Oh, yeah.
Kristen, stick with us. We're taking a break, and we'll be right back.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
Hi, this is Dion, the Wanderer. Listen to Clean and Sober Radio. You might hear something that'll change your life. Yo!
888-728-9941. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
We're back with Kristin Casey. Kristen, I have a question. Joe had a 1962 Maserati 5000 GT. Were you involved with him when he had that car?
No. In fact, the years that I was with Joe, he was drinking so heavily, he very wisely got rid of all of his cars.
I see.
Yeah, we took limos everywhere. When I went back to college briefly, he bought me a little Jeep, and we kept that for a little bit. But eventually, he just got rid of that too and we just took limos and town cars everywhere because we were always drinking. It was one of the smartest things he ever did.
Absolutely. Well, I read that car was the reason why the Eagles did the song Maserati, whatever. What was the name of the song? I forget. The first song we just played.
The one about my Maserati. That's actually Life's Been Good. That's in
Life's Been Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were only 12 of those made, I read. So I must have.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did he, when you were with him, did he have money? Or did he lose the money? Or what happened to him financially? Anything?
So the years I was with Joe were really the darkest of his life. His addictions were as bad as they'd ever been. His records were doing worse than they'd ever done. He put out 2 or 3 in the time that we were together, and he put out 1 right before we got together and 2 while we were together. They all did. They each did worse than the other, and none of them did as well as any of his others before that. So I would say he was budgeting. We would get calls, I remember, from his business manager, and he would look at me and be like, "Don't tell him I'm here. Don't tell him I'm here." And whenever I would tell him he was there and put him on the phone, Joe would be in a very bad mood for the rest of the day. So, yeah, I mean, he didn't fill me in a lot on his financial woes, but certainly he wasn't living the life that he lived when he was with the Eagles in the 70s.
Yeah. Cindy P. from Port St. Lucie, Florida said, "Hey, guys, I enjoy the show. It has helped me. It has helped family members, and we're glad you're on every Friday." And that's in Philly. And then you guys know we're in other cities during the rest of the week. They're good emails. So, okay, Kristen, why did you and how did you and when did you decide you got to get into treatment?
So, like I said, I was trying to drink myself to death. And one day in April of 97, so 28 years ago, I came to, as I did every morning, feeling like just in more pain and discomfort than I could begin to describe. But this particular day was so bad that I literally couldn't speak. I was in more pain than I'd ever experienced and didn't even know this kind of pain was possible. I could barely move. I couldn't speak, and all I could do was roll over and vomit pure bile more than a dozen times into a little trash can next to the bed. I thought I was going to die that day. My heart rate was over. I could touch my heart, and there was a clock with a second hand on the wall, so I could count my heart rate. And it was over 200 from like 8 a.m. to like 1 in the afternoon, which it's not sustainable. I had alcohol poisoning so bad that I think the odds of me surviving on my own, like I did, because I just stayed in bed, was like 2 to 1. And in that time, all I could do, because I couldn't pick up the phone, I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, all I could do was think. And I laid there thinking, okay, so this might be it. You might die today. Why are you not happier about that? Because this is what you've been after for 2 straight years. And it just kind of stunned me. Like I didn't know what to feel. I wasn't scared, but I wasn't excited. And then it was like this veil lifted in my head, and I just knew this was all wrong. Life was a gift, and I was throwing it away, and I had lost my purpose, but I needed to find another one. And quitting the game midstream was not how you played it. That I had been given this precious gift, and I needed to figure out. I had blown it. I'd screwed it up big time, but there was still a chance for me. And I thought, I'm going to call that girl that I worked with who keeps telling me she's saving me a seat in that 12-step meeting, and I'll probably do those damn steps, prove that they don't work, and then I can drink myself to death with a clear conscience. So that was kind of my plan. But I'll be damned if they didn't work. So, yeah, I couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days. And when I did, I went straight to the liquor store. But I managed to turn around even then. And I had a breakdown, a complete and utter mental breakdown in the car. I was screaming and beating the car. And then I just started talking to God and screaming, help me, my way. I have to surrender. My way isn't working anymore. You have to help me. And this calm came over me that I cannot describe. And I just drove home and I stayed there. I called my best friend and just kept him on the line for a while, got to a meeting as soon as I could, and I never drank again.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Talk about a moment of clarity,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
wow, that's the kind of ending story we
I
like
mean,
to
all
hear.
of that is in the book. That's all of that is in I think the last chapter or the second to the last chapter of Rock Monster. I talk about it in detail.
Good. And again, we emphasize everybody listening and watching, go to Amazon, get that book, Kristin Casey, Rock Monster, and you can now pre-order Casey Dancer. Kristin Casey, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. She's great. Listen, we have a lot of people. I just want to acknowledge right now that we haven't. Linda Carroll is watching. Nancy Minnick, Jim and I are enjoying the show. Well, we're enjoying that you're enjoying the show. Okay. Andrea Duffy, we have 2 judges again watching this show. Hi, Andrea. Kevin Heyer is watching. James Bilderback is watching. He's enjoying the show also. Martina Mitchell, Todd Klotz, Katie Marie, Mike Burke, Media, Pennsylvania, Gloria Pasella. Gloria, I hope I didn't butcher your name, but I think you're a newcomer on the show. Great show, right? She's
awesome
great.
Show.
Yeah, she's very interesting, and I hope our listeners and viewers got something out of the show. We're starting to hear a lot about how our listeners and viewers are enjoying the show and what the show means to them. So we're getting a little bit of that every single show now, which is good. How much time we have left? 3 minutes. Everybody's giving.
We got 3.
Everybody's giving me the
We
finger.
got
3 fingers.
You know, I found it so interesting, just her story of being on the road, and then when they broke up, trying to drink herself
to death. I want to ask you a question. How come you didn't ask her if she knew who did
Jerry Garcia?
Jerry Garcia.
Oh, I thought about it, and I was like, I think she's at a different era. When you said she lived in San Francisco,
no, she said it. I asked her where she was from. Texas,
San Diego, or she spent time in San Diego.
Yeah.
But as soon as I thought it was San Francisco, I was going to ask her. She hung out in Haight-Ashbury.
I knew you would.
Which Haight-Ashbury, for people that don't know, is like the hippie section of San Francisco. It's really cool. But
you missed it, Mark.
I know.
You were born too late.
I mean, you could look at it 2 ways: born too late, or just lucky I wasn't born.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Hey, great show. Hey, remember, everybody, if you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, help is definitely available. Please call 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-HELP, and you will get help. And for Clean and Sober Radio, I'm Gary Hendler.
I'm Mark Sigmund.
Thank you all for the support that you give us each and every day. Brad, thank you. Eric, Tyler, Marcus, thank you. Great show. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.